Todd Keebs.
Yeah.
Welcome to the attic. Dr. Gold, croc mode, whatever I'm calling it these days. It's really good to
Doc
see you,
Ock.
bro. Cheers.
Cheers right over the mixer. Splash.
Yeah. So I kind of want to take it back because I've never really had a chance to hear your story and your, I guess, music journey goes back to at least 97. So 97, Pittsburgh? You grew up in Pittsburgh? Where are you
Yeah.
from?
Yeah. Grew up in Pittsburgh and Regent Square. And
Wow.
yep.
Wow.
It's right what I call the real Regent Square, which is like between Braddock and the park. If you're on the other side of Braddock, it's not Regent Square
This is
in my opinion.
Frick Park.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, Frick Park. And were your parents engineers or musicians or both? What kind of
Neither
got you into these two worlds?
my mom. Well, I'd say my mom has, I'd say, an engineering mindset. You know, she was always the one who like kind of fixed things, did things around the house, that kind of stuff. Took on projects like that. My dad is more of an accountant, kind of. He was an accountant. More of a not as much of a hands-on kind of person. And so yeah, we I don't know. I grew up just like kind of liking engineering type stuff in general, and then got into music just through raves and through my friend Frankie, Frankie G. He was kind of him. Yes, yeah, him and I guess the internet in general. Back then the internet was a lot rougher. I mean not rougher like rough in the streets, but like rougher just around the edges.
Right.
There were mailing lists, right, rather than social media or whatever. So, um, through those people, through like the Pittsburgh, Cleveland rave mailing list, kind of got involved in going to raves, and then from raves came, hey, I could do this. These people are doing it. Why can't I?
When did you buy gear? You said 97 you bought turntables?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was 97. I played out for the first time. I think I played out for the first time in 97.
Wow.
And then 98 was like there was a lot of stuff going on in 98. And yeah. So yeah, that was the beginning.
And you were collecting house records? What kind of music were you
Oh, just drum and bass.
interested in?
Yeah,
Just
pretty much drum and bass only.
junglist.
Yep. Yeah, I mean that was the first definitely my first love, there was a
Liquid? Was that a
no,
thing?
jungle. I mean, pretty
Yeah,
much back
jungle.
then it was just jungle.
Yeah.
And there was a so the two CDs, CDs at the time was the way you got music was that were kind of the most influential. One was Drum and Bass Selection USA by Diesel Boy, and I guess his mixtapes from back then. Drum and Bass Selection might have come out a little bit later. But then there's another mix or actually there's a compilation CD of kind of all the classic jungle tunes like Original Nutta and all that kind of stuff. And it was just this like fusion of reggae and electronic music, and I was like, what is this? This is amazing. This is like nothing I'd ever heard, and it was high energy, rhythmic, fun. Yeah, so I think that was definitely what kind of got me the bug. And then Tricky, if you remember Tricky, him that whole kind of trip hop element was sort of before going to raves. I guess that's what I've been listening to up till then, like Bjork, things like that. And then I heard the jungle, and I was like, what is this? This is crazy. This would be fun to go nuts to, So then we started going to raves, and it's like, yeah, like I said, it's like we can do that. Me and Frankie. So he was kind of like my partner in crime at the time, and I mean he still is, but we just like, well, we can get some money together and buy turntables, buy a mixer. Why not?
The disconnect for me is seeing the photos of you as a kid that you've posted on social media holding cats, and I mean you seem like an upper echelon nerd. Like how did you end up at raves? And I mean
I mean, it was funny actually. The first time, first the first rave that I went to, I'd say proper rave was at the Irish Center.
Yeah.
Um, and so our other friend Josh lived in Squirrel Hill, and he kind of lived pretty close to the top of Monitor, or like where Monitor hits. Um, I guess it's commercial there. Right where like if you start at the Irish Center and you go up the hill, it's like you live like half a mile away. So we were gonna go, sleep over, quote unquote, at Josh's house, aka sneak out and go to the rave. Um, and I remember my dad actually uh came. I don't know where he got it from, like some record store or something. He came home with a rave flyer and was like, "Hey, you want to go to this rave this weekend, this thing?" And I was already planning on going by sneaking out,
Wow.
but I didn't really
Wow.
want to like go under his, you know, whatever. So I was like, no, no, I'm okay. No, we're planning on sleeping over at Josh's this weekend. So we stayed at Josh's house and left the house, because his parents didn't really care that much or didn't
Yeah.
know he hasn't. So we did that. We snuck out and then we stayed, till late, and 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 then the next weekend there was another party at the same venue, the Irish Center, um, and that one I told my parents we were going to go to, so uh, or we talked to them about it. They drove us and then they'd come and pick us up at like 2 o'clock in the morning, which is not really ideal for going to a rave. You really want to be there till 5 or 6 in the morning, but
Right. The party doesn't start until midnight,
right.
and it
I mean,
doesn't really start getting interesting until 3, 4.
yeah. I mean, they would start at like 10,
Yeah.
but yeah, like you're saying, not that many people would get there until midnight ish. So,
So how old would you have been at the
like
time?
15, I think.
And was it just the music that was exciting to you about it, or was it the people that were there? Was it the scene,
Yeah, I mean, it
drugs? I mean,
was everything. I mean, I think just the definitely the underground nature of it, like at that time nobody knew really what raves were, and um, it was just this whole subculture that you just didn't know existed, and you know you you'd show up and everybody would know each other already. There's this big sort of community that exists when you get there, and you kind of want to be a part of it and figure out what it is and learn more about it. And also, I mean, the big light shows was a big factor as well. I'd been to concerts before, but concerts, especially at that time, didn't have any production like that. They might have some pars or some kind of standard lighting, but they wouldn't have lasers. They wouldn't have um, intelligent lighting, which is what they called it, nice lights at the time.
do you remember seeing lasers at the Irish Center, or do you remember the first time you saw them?
Um,
Not sure.
I don't know about the first time per se, but one thing they used to have though was emulators, what they were called emulators, and they were actually lights that were supposed to emulate lasers. So they, it was like a cheap version of a laser at the time. I mean, now you can get lasers that are smaller than these emulators were, but back then lasers would need to be water cooled, and they'd had much less uh, horizontal or vertical range in terms of what the laser could
Right, almost like
could
how a
travel.
projector, you had like the older ones had to be a mile away from the screen in order to hit,
Exactly.
but
Yeah.
now you can buy a little pocket joint that can do 100 feet, whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they
Wow.
there was definitely one of the first times I can remember seeing a laser was at an outdoor event. I can't remember what it was, but I remember seeing the giant uh, tank of water that was just being used to cool it, and that was
Yeah.
that was from Lightwave Visuals, who or Lightwave International now they're called, who they at least as of a few years ago they were one of the biggest laser companies in the world, and so they went from that to now servicing giant tours that go everywhere. So
I was on stage with my buddy Climax like last week. He was at the venue, which is where the Rex was in the
hmm
South Side.
Enclave now, yeah.
Yeah. They have these boxes on the stage. There's at least two of them that are just, I don't know, 3 feet by 3 feet, like just a big black cube.
Hmm.
And it shoots either CO2 or fire. depending on or Sparks. The thing is insane. I never saw anything like it. It can just do
Yeah.
whatever you want it to.
Yeah, those are pretty wild.
You've seen that?
I've seen not in person, but I've seen that they exist, and that like you're saying, it's just like this box that can do whatever.
It's crazy. I couldn't believe it. It did pyrotechnics, it like actually
Mm.
had sparks flying.
With lights integrated into it too.
I didn't see any lights.
Okay, so your foam, sparks, or flames.
Yeah, yeah.
It's pretty cool.
So, okay, so we're like 15, 16, going to raves, mostly in Pittsburgh, sometimes in Cleveland. You got a little bit of a crew, and what was it? Was it Pittsburgh that was listening to DNB, or the world was listening to drum and bass, or it was just you? Like,
I mean, drum and bass was definitely well. Again, it was really more considered jungle at the time.
yeah,
But Pittsburgh was definitely a pretty big hub for it. I would say. I mean, like I mentioned before, Diesel Boy, and then 187 was another local artist who would do live jungle, um, and Andy Sign, and a lot of the people that ran Steel City Jungle, Alaska, Bricks. Um, so there was a pretty strong presence for jungle already, and so I think one of the first few events I was talking about that we went to at the Irish Center was just an all jungle party, um, and so yeah, it had it came from the UK, but was starting to have a bigger presence in the US. I don't know exactly nationally, but at least in my mind at the time, Pittsburgh was a pretty decent hub for it.
did it tend to have MCs? Were there people on stage rapping or toasting or kind of like pumping up the crowd, or
Not
were
in
the DJs?
not in Pittsburgh so much. There were a couple. There was an MC or two who would come from Philly, and there was a couple local. MC Dub 2 would sometimes come. There was trying to think. There was another guy named whose name I'm forgetting, but he threw another event later that we worked with a bit, and he would sometimes MC. He was more casual about it. He was a little bit more of a kind of toasting hosting kind of situation.
Yeah.
So yeah, it wasn't huge in Pittsburgh, and I think that's um, in some ways good, in some ways bad. But especially back then, a lot of the U.S. MCs would really just emulate UK MCs,
Of course, yeah, yeah.
and so that got a little bit weird sometimes when it was kind of clearly. Yeah,
Very derivative.
you don't have a UK accent. Why do you have it when you're emceeing?
Right.
But on the other hand, emceeing can add a lot to it. I think a lot of energy and crowd interaction. So, um, yeah.
I ended up at a drum and bass festival in Tulum a couple months ago that
Oh yeah.
Goldie played.
Oh yeah, yeah,
It was crazy.
yeah. That event's pretty wild. My friend Jake went to that. A few other people I know went to that, but it looked pretty sweet.
Yeah, it was nuts. I was in VIP. I didn't even know. I just kept climbing these stairs, and eventually, I was just in this like spot where all the booze was free, and it was just like champagne everywhere, and people were just better dressed. I was like, I think I want to hang out up here. This seems better.
Yeah. It was
No security anywhere. It was just you're in the jungle, like truly the jungle. I mean, it's
I heard there was some sort of situations with cops where like it would get shut down and then they had to pay the cops off to get it started again.
very
and
corrupt.
things like
It's
that.
incredibly corrupt. Quintana Roo is the region, which is where Cancun is, where
Uh-huh.
Tulum is, and I don't know if you've been down there at all, but I mean, it's it's very clearly not the U.S. Right? It's like you can totally get arrested and just have to give over your money, which it reminds me of the story of my probably first. I mean, I've been to a couple raves, and I kind of want to get into what a rave is, and you're going to help me define that. But I was on my way down to one in either Cleveland or Columbus. I think nearer to Columbus from Ann Arbor, where I grew up.
Mhm.
And a cop pulled us over and took all our money, and we just had to turn around and go home. I was like, we're not going to write you a ticket. We just want all your money. So corrupt Ohio cops.
Yeah, that definitely happens.
So what makes it a rave? Is it the all ages? Is it no alcohol? Is it the type of music, the community, plur? You have to exchange, little wristbands. But they did that at the Taylor Swift concert. That's not a rave.
I mean, the definition has certainly changed over the years. Back then, it meant the location wasn't announced until the day of the event. You had to call an info line phone number to get the location the day of it. That's how you would find everything out, was info line. Well, after you get the flyer would have the info line number on it. Then you'd call the info line number, and and there was a time. I mean, it was really before I started going. Really, that there were like map points where you would actually have to show up somewhere. They would then give you a map at the location to where the rave was. So yeah, that
Sick.
I only went to like a couple that were like that, but by the time I was around, it was mainly you'd call the phone number and then you'd figure out where it was. And if you were in the loop, you would kind of hear about it beforehand, maybe. But um, yeah, and so that plus the music and going late, going all night. Nowadays, I mean, the term is much more liberally thrown around. Let's say some people will be like, "We're having a, you know, frog rave or something," and it's just in their basement, and they've got a few frogs around. I don't know.
Laser crunk is not a rave.
I mean, again, nowadays you can call anything a rave. Anything nowadays that is, I would say, visually has some sort of, doesn't even have to have visually stimulating. Anything now that's either is a little bit more underground music, and electronic in nature, people will call a rave. So, you could ask 10 different people right now what a rave was, and they'd probably give you 10 different answers. Back then, it was a little more clear. It was because nobody else listened to electronic music. The only people that listened to electronic music were people that went to raves, and you couldn't go into a bar and they wouldn't be playing any electronic music. So yeah, I think that's really changed the landscape a lot. It used to be very clear, this is a rave. Nowadays, whatever.
Were you playing any instruments or singing or rapping, or were you
Uh,
interested in hip hop at all, or no?
I mean, I played trombone from when I was about 10 until 18. I played for school stuff, and I did private lessons with like a brass band and jazz band, stuff like that.
Nice.
So yeah, I did that, but it wasn't really like my passion. I did it because it's a good thing to do. I was interested in music, and I like some of the music, but I didn't, not something that I loved. I can appreciate, jazz, and I can appreciate um, brass band music, but I'm probably not going to seek it out on a regular basis. I enjoy them, but
It was the turntables that really first turned you on to I can be a musician.
yeah. Well, I mean, I wouldn't. I don't personally call DJing being a musician, um, but it was something I could do well, and I guess just seeing other people doing it and thinking that I can do that, and I thinking that I had uh, thinking that I had a certain taste that I could kind of cultivate, and also just to become involved in something that was cool and new and exciting.
How did you make that pivot from just going to the parties to playing them and throwing them?
I mean, so yeah, like I mentioned before, me and my friend Frankie, we bought turntables and a mixer, and our whole kind of plot was to have the gimmick of us being young and also there being two of us. So what we would do is we would have three turntables, and we would have two of them go into one mixer, and then that mixer go out into a second mixer that would be also connected to the other turntable. Because back then, having mixers that had more than two channels wasn't very common either. Um, and that would also allow us to both monitor one of the records at the same time. So, it was both kind of a gimmick in that, hey, it's novel and there's two of us, etc. But it also gave us the advantage of having twice as long to beat match. So most people only have, you're done mixing a record, you have to start mixing the next one right away. Whereas we had the entire time that one record was being mixed to beat match and get everything super tight.
Oh
So
wow.
that way we could, transition a lot better.
Yeah, Jeff Mills, the wizard, he was one of the first people I heard about using three turntables. but I think mostly for sound effects and spoken word. It was a lot of
Yeah.
like spoken word albums recorded in Detroit by Barry Gordy recorded a lot of spoken word on Motown.
Mm-hmm.
He recorded the "I Have a Dream" speech on Motown.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
It was if you ever hear the recording, that's usually where it's from.
Nice.
It might have been like one of his subsidiaries, Tomla or something, but anyway, I think he would kind of have it in the middle, like up, raised. But you're talking about having kind of like two turntables on one side, or wait, three turntables, two mixers.
It'd be
so what's the organization?
Turntable, mixer, turntable, mixer, turntable.
Got it. So there's like a cyclops. There's like 3 and 2 intervening mixers.
Right.
And what are the mixers at this point? Vestax.
So yeah, when at that time
Pioneer.
we were using, we got the Vestax 06T, which was a super narrow mixer, and it was designed to be a battle mixer so that you could get the turntables as close as possible, so that you could do all sorts of turntable tricks.
Right.
We liked it so that we wouldn't have to reach as far over top of each other. Because when we were mixing like that, sometimes you would cue one up with one mixer, but you'd have to then use the other mixer to mix it with. So we'd be kind of reaching over each other, crossing arms to get to what we needed to do. So having the turntables as close as possible to each other
would
helped.
make for some cool photos, though. Are there any pictures of you guys like crossing arms over the gear?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Somewhere out there.
Yeah,
and
somewhere out
is Frankie still doing music?
Yeah, he's still DJs. He moved to Japan for I don't know, 15 years or something like that, and he moved back a couple years ago. And so he was doing a lot of DJing out in Japan. He hasn't done too much here since he's been back, but a bit still. He's DJing more reggae 45s and stuff now. But I know in Japan he did a lot of Japanese funk and kind of weird stuff like that. So
dope. Kev Reason has like reggae parties where he plays vinyl, and I've been trying to get involved with some of those because I don't have a lot of reggae vinyl, but I do have a lot of records. I could definitely play a set.
Yeah, he has one tonight actually. I think at Allegheny City Brewing.
Nice.
Yeah.
This is definitely not coming out tonight. They'll never know.
Get there now.
I was live streaming the first maybe dozen of these or so, and I just didn't like it. I kind of felt like it was pulling my attention away from the conversation, and it wasn't really adding much. So I might bring it back. I just haven't fully decided. But
if you do bring it back, just also build a time machine so you can come back to this time and play it back so it's live.
Yes. Allegheny City Brewing, baby.
Get there.
So were you throwing raves or were you DJing raves? And when did you start throwing your own parties?
I got involved with throwing some parties back then with the PBS crew. And actually, Jeff Cutups just posted today that I think today or maybe yesterday was the 25-year anniversary since a party called Life Is But a Dream.
Yeah, I saw that.
And so, I helped out with that a bit. I was more kind of auxiliary then, I wasn't necessarily throwing them myself. I was more just helping out. But yeah, I guess I threw a quote unquote rave in my garage for my birthday one year. I rented some lights from Pianos and Stuff at the time, and
Blanox.
Yep, it was like my birthday present. My parents, they paid for the lights, and we had a fog machine and stuff, and so that was fun.
I got like most of my DJ gear from there, and the used room downstairs is awesome too.
Oh yeah,
a lot of my guitar stuff and everything.
Yeah,
that's hilarious. So your parents were cool with that?
Yeah, generally. I mean, they were not thrilled about. I mean, they were happy to host a party at their house, in the garage at my house, because they were able to supervise it. As far as me going to raves, they'd begrudgingly, let me go. And like I said before, they would come and pick us up at 2:00 in the morning as opposed to letting us stay until 5 or 6. And that was a little frustrating just because, I felt like some of those kind of connections in terms of getting DJ connections and stuff were at the beginning of the party, people are going to be more running around and doing stuff, whereas later in the night, you could have a little bit more time to make those connections, but it ended up working out in the end too. I mean, one thing that we did, me and Frankie, was just to facilitate also getting involved. Is at the time making web pages was not something you could just do, you know.
Right.
So we made web pages for people. Well, that was what we tried to do, you know. So we approached some of the promoters and we're like, "Hey, you could have a web page for your event, for your production company. We can do it. You know, we know HTML," and which we just kind of figured out.
And we is you and Frankie?
Yeah. And so,
And how did you know him? It was from your neighborhood? Or?
yeah, he lived like 3 doors down from me,
Oh,
essentially,
cool.
maybe
Nice.
4.
In Regent Square?
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, so that definitely helped us make connections with people too.
Yeah, yeah, because this was really the early days of the internet. Like you said, it was
Yeah.
rough. It was
Yep.
rough around the edges. Interesting. I've always loved your the websites, like Jeff's websites. The really some of the first websites I ever saw where I was really impressed because it was just so simple. Everything was just completely pared down.
Yeah.
Where it was just the information and you weren't looking at any bullshit. It was just completely just what you wanted, right? You click on what, you can see what you want to see and there's nothing on there
Yeah.
that's, superfluous. I always thought that was pretty cool. The design element I think is really important to talk about, right? It's, the design of your flyers, even everything has this attention to detail, even the design when you invite people to go eat macaroni and cheese in a park, you have a flyer for it. There's some kind of interest in aesthetics or giving people something more than the mundane basic.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that kind of funny story about that. I mean, I would say the first where that started was with Absolute Vodka.
The ads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when I was in, I guess, middle school, I started collecting them. And, for people that don't know, they used to, and I don't even know if they do it anymore, but they used to have print ads in magazines and newspapers and anything that was printed, where it would be Absolute blank.
Yep.
And then
Yep.
there would be an image of an Absolute bottle that had something to do with whatever the blank was. So, for example, Absolute Pittsburgh had a metal bottle that was red hot, indicating the steel nature of the city and whatnot. And they had hundreds and hundreds of these ads. And I always thought they were cool, and so I started collecting them. And I'd go to library and get magazines and take the ads out of them, and everybody my parents knew would collect them and give them to me, and I would collect them like that.
Use like an
and-
X-Acto blade to
Yeah.
cut the
Yep.
edge cleanly.
Yep.
And then where did you store them? You had a binder?
Yeah,
or-
I have a binder. I still have it.
Wow.
Yeah, I have several hundred ads, and they had because they were they had a really smart marketing presence. They had all sorts of other stuff too. They had a CD-ROM with a virtual museum. You could walk around kind of like Wolfenstein style, where you'd walk around this fake museum and see their ads on the walls, all sorts of other clever marketing things. And yeah, I mean, back when I was in middle school, I was collecting them, and one in art class, I don't know if anybody else's art class was like this, but when I would have you'd have a folder that you'd put all your work in for the year that you would make, and usually the first thing in the year you would do is you'd decorate that. And so I decorated mine with the Keith Haring Absolute ad, right? And it was the same, riff off of the one that was from the ad that Keith Haring had done, and I thought it was cool or whatever. And some other girl was like, "What? Why is he allowed to do that? I got in trouble for wearing a Bud Light T-shirt." And so she complained to the teacher, and then the
Wow.
teacher, I think, felt the need, even though the teacher was in support of my artistic endeavors in that area, still felt the need to report it. So they reported it to the counselor or somebody or other. So I had to then go talk to the counselor, and I knew the counselor. My mom, she was volunteered at the school and stuff, so he knew her and knew that I probably wasn't drinking, which I wasn't. And And so whenever I came in, the counselor sort of clearly had felt the need to have this discussion with me, but sort of walked me through it a little bit. I went in and they're like, "So, you're here because of the Absolute ad, and it's alcohol, and just what's your interest in that?" And I was like, I don't know. I'm 12 years old. I didn't really
Yeah.
know why I liked it. I just liked them. I thought they were cool. And they're like, "So is it like a marketing? Are you interested in marketing and design?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, that's it. Yep, yeah,
Nailed it.
that's what it is. Uh
Nailed
huh.
it.
Yep, thanks." and uh, and so that was kind of the first time that I think I, was realized that there was things like that. Before that I hadn't really didn't know why I liked it, and then I sort of that made me realize that, oh yeah, I do kind of like these things. So getting back to, I guess, the question at hand, you know that is, I think those things that can really grab somebody's attention and pull them in without them realizing that you're pulling them in with something is important. Because the music itself, a lot of times people have negative attitudes about music that they don't know why they have a negative attitude, and that may not be real. So sometimes bringing them in with something else is important.
That's awesome. Wow. So you mostly have done the flyer design, I guess, for Laser Crunk over the 15 years
I mean, me and Jeff
you guys
together.
work together.
Jeff's certainly a big inspiration for me as well. I mean, we collaborate on that kind of stuff a lot. Sometimes he'll have an idea, and I'll do the flyer. Sometimes, vice versa. And he's always had a good design sense, and also just a lot of creative ideas and ways to kind of take a normal idea and flip it on its head and make something that's fun and weird and gets people's attention. And also Nick Bulletproof, who was involved in the Fuzz Night that we did for a long time. He did the flyers for that, and he has a really good design sense and also kind of like a stripped down mentality, like you were saying, in terms of design. So yeah, I think all that combined.
They yeah, so I guess so both kind of immediately present, so immediately understandable, and then also minimal, like a little on the minimalistic side, maybe in terms of the aesthetic.
Yeah,
Aesthetic.
I would say so. I mean, there's
And also a little cheeky, right? It's like a little tongue in cheek.
yeah,
It's kind of like
yeah. That's
there's some humor there.
yeah. I would say like nowadays, probably we don't do that 100% of the time. I mean, when we started doing Laser Crunk flyers, it was a different time. Also musically, again, a lot of the electronic music wasn't very popular back then, so that wasn't going to be our main selling point. Nowadays, and also we have, we're older, we have a little bit of an older crowd than we did back then. It's now there's a little bit higher level of knowledge of the music and the artists, so a lot of the times people aren't coming for just whatever. They're coming for the music. They're coming because they actually know the artists. When we started doing Laser Crunk, I would say there was 1% of the people had any idea of the artists that we were bringing in. They just knew that they would go to Brillo Box and there would be a fun party and people would be going crazy and there were DJs and they'd be like, "Cool, let's go." Whereas now somebody might be like, "Oh, I like this artist, I'm going to go for that." So nowadays, I think a lot of the artists or a lot of the flyers have become a bit more artist focused. We still like to have fun themes and concepts and ideas and visuals, but the artist is a bit more of a focus now.
Yeah. So what I guess 15 years ago was that Lil Jon Crunk? Was that happening at the time? That's kind of where the name came from.
I mean, yeah, crunk music in general was happening then, yeah.
Yeah. Just drunk and what
crazy, I think
crazy drunk.
crazy and drunk, yeah.
Beyond drunk.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and back then, the music was a lot more. I mean, the music that we played was a lot more sort of mashup oriented. I mean,
Right.
I wouldn't really call it mashup. It's really more remix. So that the fusion of hip hop and electronic music was pretty at the forefront of what we were doing, and I would say it still is. It's just evolved a lot since then. I mean,
Yeah.
now it's a mature version of that has evolved into its own thing rather than before it was more of just take something that exists and add electronic beats to it.
Yeah. Yeah. But before we get to launching this party, you still have to go to college and finish high school and everything. So
Yeah, yeah.
so the rave thing was happening mostly in high school. You're starting to DJ. You've got turntables. You're collecting records, buying Jungle records. Where
Yeah.
was it? Jerry's or
No, Jerry's didn't really sell much of that, and the used market didn't really exist for that stuff. Now you can go there and get that stuff because it's old. But back then there was Hyper Vinyl was the first record shop we went to, and then there was Future Sounds in Squirrel Hill, and Milk Records in the Strip District. Those were the three main ones. There might have been, I think, Record Rama sometimes had jungle and drum and bass, but yeah.
are you still collecting vinyl?
No, no.
Do you still have your records
Oh yeah, I still have my records.
in storage or
Um,
out?
in my house. Yeah,
You have them at home, yeah.
yeah,
And you play them at all, or they're mostly singles? It's not
yeah.
exactly like listening stuff.
Exactly.
They're not LPs.
No, I did recently get a listening turntable for my living room. I still need to hook it up, but I have it actually on my record shelf. So yeah, I still have them. I don't think I'd ever get rid of them, just because pretty foundational memory building blocks. um, and but yeah, I don't really collect anymore. I mean, if there's an instance where somebody has vinyl, then I'll buy it. But I'm not one of those kind of sentimental. I mean, I'm sentimental about the records that I've owned because again, that was like a pivotal moment and thing in my life. But I'm not sentimental about the format itself. Um, in my opinion, it's an inferior format.
Oh, wow.
You know,
To CD or MP3, like
to
MP3
digital,
to
just digital in
waves?
general. Yeah,
In, and
MP3 or digital,
just
or
because of
waves.
portability or
Well, sound quality. You know.
so I was just thinking about this. I mean, I think about it a lot, but if you pull up Crosstown Traffic, Manic Depression, any of the records, any of the songs off of the Jimi Hendrix Experience, 1968, and play them off Spotify, I mean, it's possible they just got a bad rep or a bad recording, but it sounds like shit. Like it
Mhm.
sounds terrible.
Y-
And I have the original press right behind me, and it is mind blowing. I mean, it's possible they just have like a mono version or something or whatever is wrong with their recording,
Yeah.
but I don't think that's an isolated experience. I mean, I think that there is something about the format of vinyl that if you have the right gear, if you have the right, you know, mixer and preamps, it's it will I mean it's insane how much better it sounds.
Yeah, I'm not, I can't say that I agree. I would say that I agree that I'm not doubting that that record that you have sounds better than the Spotify mix, to be clear. But what I would say probably is the case is that was mastered and mixed at a time when it was being done for vinyl. They knew exactly what it was. They knew how it'd be mastered once, or how it'd sound once it was pressed. They did all of that in the right ways for that. But that doesn't mean that it's and there also may be what's good and what's not good is subjective, right?
Right.
So I could certainly also believe that there are things about vinyl that people prefer, um, you know, but in terms of accuracy and in terms of reproducing, it's just inherently not as good. I mean, it's not as accurate. Again, let me take the word good out. It's not as accurate. So I mean, I've read some papers about where somebody was trying to figure out what it is, and they took two things, one that was on vinyl, one that was digital, compared them, did a pretty deep analysis, and in the end, they're trying to figure out why do people like the way it sounds. In the end, results were, well, there's a giant high frequency roll off on records. There's a bunch of pops. There's a bunch of distortion. you know, um, so like again, those things may be things that people like, and there may be reasons why people like them, and sort of inherent things that we either what we've grown up with, or whatever. But in terms of accurately reproducing sound, it's
High frequency roll off is just low pass.
yeah.
Yeah. So you're missing out on a lot of the highs, I guess. Um, in vinyl, that's interesting. So
And
I guess like not every record is the same too. So
Sure.
one example,
Yeah.
I'm reading the Michael Jackson biography right now, and they're talking about making Thriller, and the first version they submitted to the record company, which was now I can't remember which one. It it was his second record after leaving Motown, but whatever. They It was terrible, and one of the reasons was it was too long. So they were talking about they had to shorten it in order
Right.
to thicken the grooves,
Yeah.
and that once they got it down to like 10, 11 minutes on each side from 14, that it just sounded way better. It was louder.
Right.
Those like fat grooves kind of
Yeah.
made it what it was.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, and that's very real. It's you can get, different pressings of things that sound totally different. And I mean, I think that's part of the reason why some people like vinyl a lot and why collectors like vinyl, right? Because there is this sort of uniqueness about each record. And, you could get a good pressing of one, you could get a bad pressing of one, you could seek out the one, and those weird pops and hiss and whatever is sort of a unique signature of it that people like. My engineering mentality is more that I'd rather have a more accurate version personally. If I wanted it to sound like that, I could also add a filter to it and I could take that digital file that's as closer to being an exact reproduction, add a low pass to it, add pops. I'm sure there's tons of people are going to listen to this and be like, "This guy's full of shit. What an asshole!"
Nah, that's
I
me.
love vinyl.
I'm ready. No, yeah, I'm ready to be that person. Wouldn't you say that the fact that people are doing that, meaning when you listen to the radio, you can actually hear records where it's clearly a digital recording where they've added in little pops and record noise. I mean, it's a filter in Ableton, record noise.
Right.
You can just add it in. And why does that exist? It's right. Is it just nostalgia? I don't think so. I think there's something more to it than that. It's got to be we don't want perfect.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. I do, but I understand that some people don't.
So maybe
I mean, that's not even true. I mean, obviously, I like music that has distortion in it, right? I mean, just about any track is gonna have distortion somewhere in the signal chain. But what I would rather have that those things be done by the people producing the tracks, so that their intention can be properly conveyed to me. If they wanted to add those things, then yeah, they should add them. And there's like saying there's lots of music where that's added intentionally.
Maybe that was one of the reasons that you gravitated more towards the electronic sounds, is that hip hop and rock probably do have a little bit more of and punk music. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not clean, right? It's this kind of grimy, gritty, kind of underproduced type of world. Whereas in the electronic world, people are kind of seeking perfection in some ways, and you can get a much cleaner, kind of crispier sounding mix, even back in the 90s and in the 2000s.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely true. Although I will also say that one of the most influential artists, like I mentioned before, was Tricky, who was very sample based, very kind of gritty sounding. So I do think you're right. I mean, that's sort of what I tend to lean towards because of those reasons. But I do also appreciate texture that is added by distortion and pops and stuff like that. But it's more, I guess, it's more so having the original artist's intention conveyed to the end user. I mean, I'm not going to go and get headphones that intentionally sound like shit. So why would I want my format of my music to also sound that way?
Well,
Uh,
we'll table this one. So we're going
rabbit hole.
so we're in high school, and the interesting piece for me to learn about is that it wasn't just music, that you were still achieving academic success to the point that you were able to go to Miami and become an engineer.
Yeah. I mean, I got a pretty good scholarship. Went to school for so yeah. When my like I mentioned before, my mom was volunteered in the schools kind of throughout my life. And in high school, she created a career program at Shenley, where I went to high school,
Okay.
and she sort of there was an empty room, and she was like, "Hey, why don't I make a career center to help people figure out what they want to do?" And they were like, "Okay, sure." I actually recently found uh, a letter that she had written to the principal proposing this concept
So cool.
and asking for, I mean, it was some ridiculously small amount of money, like $2,000 or something like that to get this started. And she had to write this whole proposal and grant. Nowadays I think it would be a lot less of. I mean, not that $2,000 isn't a lot, but for what she did, it was very minimal. Um, and and she created this whole room with a library of stuff like that. And she was helping other people figure out what they want to do. I didn't really know. I knew I kind of liked I liked engineering. I liked music. And she was said, "Wait, what do you think about audio engineering?" I was like, "I don't know what that is, but it sounds cool. I'm in." And as we looked into it more in terms of colleges and whatnot, we realized that there's a lot of different ways you can go into it. They have audio engineering programs in like physics schools for more acoustics based stuff. They have audio engineering programs in music schools for more mixing and that type of approach. And they also have it in electrical engineering programs, which is what I eventually landed on. I went to school for electrical engineering with a focus on audio, and kind of figuring out, why things sound good and why things don't.
You were like, I'm already a DJ, but I'm going to become the Einstein of DJs.
I don't know about that, but I mean, especially back then, digital technology was really starting to happen from an audio perspective. Turntables were the only thing that were around back then. You could DJ on. Sort of in my college years was when Final Scratch, which then became Serato, evolved. But that was, at the time, a project somebody had with a giant desktop computer and some DIY hardware equipment. But that was still exciting. And so the prospect of being involved in something like that was pretty cool.
It would have been like 2003, 2000 something in there.
Yeah,
in
I
terms of
graduated in
Final Scratch?
90. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I graduated in 99 from high school.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think I
Towards the end of college,
I
maybe
think so.
somebody was
Yeah.
very, very early on figuring it out, like you said,
Right.
and not really commercially available
Yeah.
until and it would have been Scratch Live or what did you say? Final
Scratch, I
Final-
think is what.
Yeah,
I think.
and yeah. I remember probably 2006, 2007 getting into it, but first having some other iterances, whether Torque or whatever,
Right.
which was a similar solution of digital to analog to digital conversion or whatever.
Yeah.
The piece that some people don't know about me is that I first came to Pittsburgh to take college courses in 2004 and the fall of 2003 before I went to college here at Pitt to take audio engineering classes at Carnegie
Nice.
Mellon.
Oh, nice.
Which, like you said, was more of learning how to record in a big studio.
Right.
So our final project was recording a symphony or something and setting up like studio pair microphones, learning how to mic drums, learning how to things like that. But there was also a physics component. So, for example, I sometimes wow people. I sometimes impress people by telling them there's more than one type of decibel. They're surprised to learn.
Yeah.
There's like 15 at least. And decibel is a logarithmic scale.
Right.
So 10 dB is a doubling, right? It's not like 140 to 150 is like 150 is twice as loud as 140,
Yeah, and there's also
right?
power involved in terms of if it's voltage, it's going to be different than other things. Like sound output is going to be different than a voltage, etc. So yeah, there's a lot in there.
A lot to unpack. Let's pause
Yeah.
to cool the room down.
I also just went on like safari, like out, into like, um, Serengeti and stuff, and that was, uh,
Crazy.
yeah, it was great. But I mean, I came back with all these photos. I put them into a book, like made like a coffee table book out of them.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
I mean,
Was it Walgreens or something? Or
it was like an online thing, but people will come over and just look at it, and they'll be looking at it and be like, "Oh, this is cool," and then they go like, "Wait, you're in these photos and you took them?" I'm like, "Yep."
that was all Sony
Yeah.
A7 R or whatever.
That was actually A6000.
Okay, that was the previous camera.
Yeah. Now they have A7C.
Yeah. Yeah, the party photos for me is so essential. I mean, I think it's wild when I meet DJs who don't like take photos. It just
Yeah.
how do you promote your events? How do you get people to know that you did anything? You just rely on people to show up and take pictures? I mean, the one time I booked a photographer for a party in New York City was $500.
Yeah.
That's insane. I mean,
Yeah.
no, and they deserve it, right? Like,
Sure.
I think if you're there for 4 hours working, that's $400 at least, right? I
Yeah.
mean, paying somebody in nightlife when you know that they're not working every day and they're only able to work for that little 4-hour chunk,
Right.
less than $100 an hour, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that it doesn't make sense. It's not really reasonable.
Especially when you know what the price of the equipment is, like we do. Most people are like, "Oh, they have a camera, no big deal," But when if you want something that's good quality, it's not cheap.
Exactly. And the point that we were talking about with the lenses and bodies that the last guy I had on, Zero, made was that the lens is much more important than the body. So it's better to have a quality lens and an okay body than vice versa.
Yeah, I can imagine that. But I mean, isn't sensor quality pretty huge too?
Matters. The brain I've found is really what matters the most. That's why the iPhone photos look so good now.
Right.
It's because it's not AI, but it's
Well, that's AI.
is it?
Yeah,
It's like
machine
power
learning.
yeah.
They process so many photos and then they figure out, okay, these ones look good. This aspects of it look good. Boost this, don't boost that.
But that's why they have the 3 lenses on the back, right? Is to incorporate features from each one and fix the shadowing, fix the shading.
I don't think they usually combine lenses actually.
So the photo, like if you take a photo close up, they're using the macro. If you take a photo from far back, they're only using the.
I mean, I think
And then they have a zoom or
that's
whatever.
whenever you control the zoom via the
They're just
slider.
swapping
Yeah.
between the lenses.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. I thought it was to do with the HDR feature on the photos because you can turn HDR on and off. Now it's all on by default.
Yeah,
But I thought that was when they would.
no, the
include
HDR
two.
is just multiple exposures that they then combine into one from the same lens. Yeah,
Fascinating.
there are some cameras, and it doesn't seem to be very popular anymore. But there were some cameras that had I think they were very high megapixel black and white sensor that would then do what you're saying is take those photos at the same time as the main sensor and then combine them somehow. But I never really saw like a head to head on what it looked like with and without it, and it seems to be going out of popularity. So I'm not sure that the risks or the cost out benefited the gains.
Right. Interesting. So let's get back on track. So
Yeah,
you're
we
off
talking
to college. You finished
Oh, yeah.
Shenley High. You
Yep.
had a scholarship to go to Miami. Why Miami? Was it music related? Were you going to find craze and codes, or was this a long time before slow roast became a thing?
No, yeah, it was. It was. I mean, Craze was around then. But it was. It was mainly because of the program. They were one of the people who had the electrical engineering program, and so they actually started a program called music engineering there, which was the sort of music side of it, the more mixing and studio oriented side of it. But it was that with a pretty strong technical basis behind it, and that was in the music school there. And then they, at some point, realized they were having a lot of their music majors take classes in the engineering school, and then the engineering school said, "Hey, we should have an engineering side of this." So they then created the audio engineering program there, and that was sort of the electrical engineering cohort. So that was why I went there, mainly because they had this really good program in both of those, both the music as well as the electrical engineering side of it. Um,
And was it a big program or was it
Not huge. I mean, I don't remember exactly how many people were in the program, but it was like it wasn't huge.
any other DJs? Everybody was kind of
Um,
looking at it from the side of going to work in the industry and
yeah, most of the people there were definitely there were definitely more producers and DJs in the music side of it. I'd say the electrical engineering side of it was less so. I was probably one of the few. There were, I mean, there were a couple others, but most of the friends I made on in that side of things were coming from the music side of it.
did you live in Coral Gables?
Yeah.
What are you like what did you think when you got to Miami?
I mean, it was a culture shock and a half. Even though, so my mom's Cuban, and so I would go down there, once a year for my whole life up till then, or more. So I was familiar with Miami, but living there is a different story than just visiting. Um, you become, yeah, it's definitely a culture shock, to say the least. When I got down there, I was like, oh, I'll go to a rave. This will be cool. I go down there, and first thing I see is somebody in a Lamborghini with gold teeth, standing out front, and like people doing all sorts of weird stuff with asphyxiating each other for drug reasons inside, and it was strange.
Wow. Wow. So I have to show you my hat here. Hang on. So my wife's Cuban. So my son is a Juban, and but not a Cuban sandwich. But that's a thing. Somebody put like sauerkraut on a Cuban sandwich or something sacrilegious like that.
I can actually imagine that. That might not be bad.
Not bad.
Yeah.
I don't think I've eaten it, but there is a really good Jewish deli actually in Hialeah now.
Oh, okay. Nice.
It's one of my favorite Jewish delis in the world. I was just there with my folks. I can't remember what it's called. I think Alexander's. Yeah.
Okay.
Alexander's Delicatessen.
There used to be one on South Beach that I would go to late night sometimes. That was super good. I can't remember what it was called, but yeah.
We were just staying in Surfside, which is interesting. Like after that whole collapse and everything.
Oh, right.
Um, like just weird. I feel like I am followed by tragedy somehow. Like there's something about me that just like tragedy follows me around, living in Charleston, South Carolina, and then Pittsburgh, and then like vacationing in Surfside. Like, is it just that the whole world is fucked up, or is it just like my life
Just you.
meant
Just you.
meant to attract negative energy somehow? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. So, so that's interesting. You had this Cuban family. You were going down to Florida. Where were they? Were they in Hialeah or in the beach?
They
like
live
South Beach?
they live in Coral Gables. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
They lived about, so my grandmother lived about, or grandmother and grandfather lived about, it's like a mile from school. So that was really nice. I mean, that was definitely a factor in going there as well. You know, I'd considered going to Carnegie Mellon also, and it was kind of down between the two of them. And ultimately, I went to middle school and high school in Oakland. I was like, I don't know if I really want to spend another 4 years in Oakland. It's time for a change of scenery.
I had the exact same experience avoiding University of Michigan, right? So growing up in Ann Arbor, I'd been partying with the Michigan kids for 4 years all through high school. I mean,
Yeah.
I spent some time in Lansing at Michigan State, and I went to Kalamazoo once. But like basically, it was played out at that point.
Right.
And did they have everything that I wanted? And it, in terms of a neuroscience program and chemical engineering or whatever I was interested in at the time, yeah, absolutely, it would have been great. But I
Right.
wanted to get away from home.
Yeah.
I just really was done with Ann Arbor. I was done with Michigan, and Pittsburgh was 5 hours away. But you did a lot more than 5 hours. 2,000 miles or no, exactly 1,000 miles, I think, right? Something like that.
Oh, to Miami?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. I don't.
I think it's
know.
exactly 1,000 miles.
Could
It's
be.
kind of crazy, like 1,000 miles to the South Beach or something. But
Yeah.
but that was a hike. But I guess you had the
Yeah.
family connection.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it was, if I got sick, I could just go over to my grandmother's house and
Get some of
hang out on
that
the
soup.
couch, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd go over there for dinner, once a week or something like that.
Lechon and
So that was nice.
jamon. Do you speak Spanish?
I can understand it okay. I don't really speak it much, but I can get by if I need to, especially if people speak at a reasonable pace and with the same Cuban accent that my grandmother had, then that helps a lot.
Lentamente, por favor.
Yeah.
Lentamente. So interesting. So you didn't, your mom didn't speak Spanish in the home when you were growing up.
No. 'Cause my dad didn't, and
Yeah.
I mean, I took that was why I was at Shenley, because of the language program, Language Magnet. So I did, I took Spanish when I was in school.
Yeah.
But it's a big difference between taking it in school and really using it and
For sure.
whatnot.
Yeah, I feel like fairly confident with my Spanish. Not that I'm like fully conversant, but at least in a medical context, I know enough to make people feel comfortable.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
to let them know that I'm not a dick and that I care about the fact that they aren't native English speakers.
Yeah. And that's a good first step.
I think it's big, and if I were to move to South Florida to work, which I might, I mean, who knows? Right now I'm interviewing and it's just everything's up in the air.
Mhm.
I would definitely take some like medical Spanish classes and
Yeah.
and just make it happen. So you get there. Are you still DJing? Did you DJ in Miami, or you were just like focused on music? Focused on engineering, because
Yeah.
that's kind of what happened to me going to medical school. I just like dropped everything. Like my whole music career was just like poof, and then I was a doctor.
Yeah, I mean, I brought my turntables down in
Nice.
a giant coffin, which I would not recommend.
With the little wheels on the
do.
bottom.
Yep. Yeah. If anybody listening is considering getting a single case,
Oh god.
the thinking is, well, I could get 3 cases for each of my pieces of equipment, or I could get 1 case for all of them. That sounds like a great idea. It's not, because then you need somebody else to help you do anything with it.
Just think about the name. It is literally the size and weight of a coffin with a dead body inside, or 2.
Yeah. Yes,
miserable. We got one
don't
up
do
onto
that.
a roof, actually in South Florida, in Fort Lauderdale. My buddy Ant, like my DJ partner, my Frankie or Cut Ups or whatever, he had this gig at the Art Walk in Fort Lauderdale, Fat Village, and for one reason or another, they told him he had to DJ on the roof. And he was like, "Yeah, this is gonna be sick," and I'm like, "You have a coffin. Like, this is going to be terrible." There were these like ladders, literal vertical ladders we had to climb with the coffin.
Oh my god.
And I'm pushing it up and he's like hoisting it up. It was just,
Yeah.
not fun. So yes, kids, don't buy a coffin under any circumstances. Odyssey sells cases for whatever device you have.
Yeah.
Just buy it. It's $100.
And the new plastic cases too are super nice.
Ooh.
I don't know. I assume they have them for turntables, but they have them for CDJs, and it's like it's almost like a Pelican case, but for and yeah, Odyssey makes them too. They're not cheap. I think they're $250 a piece, but they're very nice.
Dude, maybe I'll start DJing again.
Yeah.
I keep on telling people like I'm not doing it because nobody has turntables. Like there's only Goldmark has turntables. That's it. And so
Yeah. Well, to be fair, not that many places have CDJs either in Pittsburgh. I mean, like most places, you have to bring your own stuff anyways. It's like
right. That's fair. But I never got down with CDJs. Did you at some point learn how to use them?
Yeah, I've actually just been using them more recently. Whenever for a long time I just DJ'd vinyl, and then once Tractor came around, where you could use a computer and a controller, that was when I was like, wow, this is sweet. Now I can play whatever I want, because I only spun drum and bass jungle up till then. And I was like, oh, I can play other music? Like, this is sweet. And that was the big inflection point for me. And once I did that, I never looked back.
Do you still rock on Tractor?
Yeah, I still use Tractor.
Never got into Serato at all.
Nah. Yeah, I don't do any scratching or like turntablism, so records don't really, appeal to me. Back to record versus other things, right? I certainly am not going to say that records aren't good for turntablism and that. I mean, from a control perspective, I think turntables and records have a lot of advantages, and there's a lot of reasons to use them for that. Just because the physicality of it, the precise control you can get, the motor speed and everything. there's a lot of reasons to use vinyl for that. But as far as queuing up songs, I can queue them up a lot easier in Tractor when I set a queue point and I press one button and it goes to that queue point. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you use the sync? Is there
Oh,
a
yeah.
Tractor sync?
100% sync.
You do it.
Oh, yeah.
It just works. And
It works.
most of the records you're mixing are around the same tempo anyway, so it's not like a huge deal. You're not going to end up with something that's
I wouldn't say that.
16% and
No,
sounds terrible.
I mix I mix all over the BPM range, all the way from 80 to 180. But then that's part of why sync is so important, because then if I'm playing something that's at 120 and I want to get up to 140, I can do that in 2 songs by changing the speed fader, where both songs are going to track at the same time. If I'm playing 2 songs and I want to increase the BPM, I can just do that. Whereas with turntables, you're doing that, you'd have to move both faders at the exact same time, which is basically impossible.
No. Not only is it not impossible, but it's essential. And one of the reasons it's essential is an engineering thing that I've talked about on the podcast, which has to do with the relationship between the speed of the record and the pitch, which is nonlinear.
Right.
So if the records are beat matched, but not in tune, so there's a problem with the intonation of the two, you can adjust both by +1% or both by -1%, and you could potentially keep them both in BPM range, but now they could be synced up with intonation.
Yeah, that makes sense. But if you wanted to do that while they were playing, I wouldn't believe that you could do it. I mean, somebody like Craze could do it, but in terms of while they're playing without without them going out of sync, to move both faders at the same time.
Yeah, you must. Not only can you must.
Okay, I'll challenge you to that. At the end of this podcast, he's gonna post a video of himself doing this.
I can't wait. No, I really can't wait to get back into it. I'm gonna start my rap career first, though.
Okay, cool.
Tomorrow night at Trace Brewing.
Oh wait, seriously?
Yeah, they've got like a little open mic, open cipher thing that my buddy No Casino is doing the beats for. Trevor, I think. Travis is his name. And I'm gonna pull out the old pad and just see how it goes.
Nice. That'll be fun.
Yep. So you had your turntables down there, but you didn't have a show, or was there a venue where you were going to shows at? Was there venues that you were playing at, or you were pretty focused in?
Yeah, I mean, so I was DJing in my room, and I kind of made a few friends that way. Actually, I made one friend through, there was some sort of, I don't remember what it was, but basically you could see other people's files, like a common file sharing thing through the network there.
Oh, cool.
And I ended up, somehow this other guy found some folder that I had that had some something DJ related in it, and I don't even remember how you met. I think you could somehow message people through it, and ended up messaging me through it, and turned out he was a DJ, I was a DJ, we ended up DJing together, and the problem I think more back then was that, again, I was only spinning jungle and drum and bass, and most people didn't know what it was, and most people aren't going to like things that they don't know, so
it was a big house scene at the time, if I remember correctly.
In Miami, I mean, progressive house kind of, and that's really, it was in like the quote unquote super clubs, the big clubs where
Rock Bar was a thing, and the Delano had like FDR, and
but those places where you'd go wearing a dress shirt and dress shoes, and they wouldn't let you in if you weren't. And I wanted nothing to do with those places. I mean, granted, there was drum and bass and jungle down there at the time. Beat Camp crew was kind of the big force, and I made some ins with them a little bit. Started to become friends with some of them, but to be honest, there was just a lot of politics and BS associated with it that I don't like dealing with. In Pittsburgh, you could approach somebody and be like, "Hey, I'm so and so. I'm interested in this," and they'd be like, "Oh, cool," and they like want to talk to you, and like, you could maybe help out or do whatever you wanted. Down there, it was just everybody was like stepping on each other to get to the top, and people weren't very interested in that there. So not that I didn't play any gigs, but I played very few the first. Well, I played very few the entire time I was down there, really. But the first couple years, much more sparse. And then um, there was a radio show, a Friday night radio show called The Underground, which a guy named Egg Foo Young ran at the time. And it was sort of a legacy show that would be passed down from one person to another. And I befriended him and would go to the studio sometimes and hang out with them. And he was into he was into a lot of music. And he's has a really good musical sense. He was in the music program there. And he, like the orb and a lot of that kind of stuff and jungle as well. And so I became friends with him, and he knew that I was, one of the few people in the school that kind of liked similar styles. So he ended up passing the show down to me. And the show was a Friday night show from, I feel like it was 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. So I mean, and it was, here college radio doesn't really go that far just due to the hills and the power. Down there it goes a lot further. So, and it was, it's a pretty big school, so it we were able to reach a pretty wide audience. And it already had a following also, and prime time for people going out. So I took that over for the last 2 years, and through that, again, down there, everything is very political based, and everybody wants to, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, that kind of thing. So there was a lot of, hey, I've got an event coming this weekend. I'll put you on the list. You can have a list of people. You can give away tickets on the show, etc. So I was able to make a lot of connections that way and meet a lot of people and get into a lot of free parties. But even then, I still didn't get many DJ gigs. Even though people would hear the show and they liked me for that perspective, actually playing out was kind of another thing down there. So I never really cracked that much. I played a couple things, but most of it was just radio. So which was cool. I mean, it was another side of things. It gave me definitely more freedom. And I didn't play only drum and bass. I played a lot of different stuff. But yeah.
You were mixing live on the radio on Tractor?
No, that time, then we were mixing with vinyl. And then
You had all your records from Pittsburgh already?
yeah, I brought them with me. Yeah.
Nice.
And also CDs. So we could if they were usually, I think we'd do a portion that was mixed, and then a lot of it we would just play new stuff that we liked.
Yep, you had some CD players, and you were like burning CDs too, because there was LimeWire, Napster, file sharing.
Yeah.
Was that a big part of things? The blogs? When did that? I mean,
yeah. I mean, the blog stuff really didn't really pop off until kind of more I guess that would have been like the mid 2000s. Yeah, like, yeah.
We're not there yet. We're still in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Okay. But the college radio thing gets us to an important part of the story, which is when we met, right? Because we met at WPTS, Pittsburgh.
Wait, was that when we actually met?
Absolutely. Yeah, 2006 or so. I had a show at PTS.
Yeah.
You were there with Jeff.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure I met you and Jeff the same exact day I met Carlton Goals. And it was like, you guys might have been with him.
Okay.
And
wait, Carlton Goals?
Yeah. He's like one of my best friends now.
Do I know him?
He was a PhD student at Pitt at the time in the I think communications department.
Mm-hmm.
He was writing a thesis about Jeff Mills, the wizard, and
all comes back.
Now he's writing the book on
sweet.
The post Motown Detroit sound.
Nice.
Speaking of Detroit sound, he founded the Detroit Sound Conservancy, which is the organization in Detroit that's saving the buildings. That's at least partially responsible for saving United Sound Systems recording, which is, arguably more significant than the actual Motown recording studio. It was the first place that Berry Gordy recorded records in Detroit.
Nice.
That's where Parliament Funkadelic recorded pretty much all their stuff. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And they were going to just bulldoze it and put a on-ramp for I-94.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's happening all the time. It's happening in Pittsburgh. We don't even talk about it, right? There's, like the Syria Mosque we lost. There's a lot of shit.
Yeah.
That goes down. So, But yeah, so I met you through college radio, and this was your first introduction to college radio, but it was because this guy had the connection. Egg Foo Young, was
Yeah,
that his name? Yeah,
yeah.
and he had already had some experience with college radio, and it convinced you to take over the show.
All right, you didn't need to convince me. I was, I was waiting for it. Because I was going in there and just hanging out and going to the show for when he was doing it. That was also obviously another easy way to meet more people involved in music. And yeah, I mean, I think he did the right thing in passing it down to me, but he could have passed it down to whoever. But there weren't that many underground DJs, and
You were already thinking about coming back to Pittsburgh, or you had other ideas, thought about staying down there? What was the decision to come back home?
yeah, I between my junior and senior year, I did an internship with a startup company in Pittsburgh, um, that was making microphones, and so I then did that internship, and then over my senior year, I continued doing consulting for them while I went to school, which was great when you can, get paid as a consultant while you're doing your what do they call that? School work or not school work? The work studies
Okay.
program. Where they I was working in a library, quote unquote, watching the computer labs while I did my other work. And so, yeah, double dipping on that was pretty nice. And then they offered me a job during my senior year, and I came back.
But you've been at a couple other companies since then. This was like your first real engineering job.
Yeah, no, I mean, really, it's that company that I started there, and I was with them for 16 years, maybe 15 or 16.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was a startup company, and then we got acquired by Bosch, and then yeah, everybody's like, "Ooh, that sounds nice," but meanwhile, we got acquired at a giant loss, so I didn't get anything out of it.
Oh no. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, but of course, the investors get paid first, the employees,
Right. But you had points, but it didn't matter because it was
right.
bought at a loss. So were you designing microphones or what?
Yeah, I
What were you
mean,
doing?
I wasn't personally designing them. I was in the kind of systems engineering group, which means that I was helping customers design the microphones into their products, and then also doing the internal evaluation of the microphones before they were released, and if we had any issues with them in the field. So the designers would kind of design, they design a prototype. I would then test it, put it through all the electrical and acoustic and sort of real world tests, and then we would I'd say okay, good enough, and then we release it, and then help people put it into their products.
What has been the most inspiring or interesting thing about the career in electrical engineering? So why do you still do it, for example?
Um, I would say I like doing it just because you get to tackle problems that people have never seen before, and do something that's novel, that kind of pushes boundaries. And we were the first company to release a digital microphone into the market. um, and then so these are microphones that go into other products, so like laptops, cell phones. Very small microphones are called MEMS microphones. So they're made out of silicon, the same thing you make computer chips out of. Yeah. So
What does MEM stand for?
micro electromechanical systems.
And can you explain a little bit of the physics?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same as a standard capacitive microphone. So it's two metal layers that move with sound, or one of the layers moves with sound, and one of them stays still. And the voltage change that occurs as a result of that induces a current change, which can then be turned into an electrical signal. So the normal computer chips are made out of essentially different metal layers with interconnection between them. And so with MEMS, what's done is you make those using photolithography, and then you do chemical etching steps, which remove certain physical portions between those metal ones. So essentially, you would create a mesh of metal, and then you would release that mesh so that it's floating, not floating in air, but has a membrane. So the membrane then becomes suspended from all the edges, and as sound goes across it, the pressure causes that to move, and voltage across that creates this current, etc.
How long has that technology existed?
Um, when we entered the market, uh, okay, so before they were making microphones out of it, they were making accelerometers, and that's what pretty much all accelerometers are made out of. Also, because again, you can imagine two moving things that, two metal things that are moving back and forth that can sense movement, just like an inertial sensor. So before we were in it, there were analog microphones out at the time, um, but there weren't any digital, and they weren't, and even then, they weren't super common. Um, and there's a lot of advantages of them from a size perspective, from a reflow perspective. So when you're doing electronics and you're soldering all the parts onto a board, it used to be that you would have to take a microphone and have wires coming off of it, and you would hand solder it, those connections, because you couldn't put it through the normal process, which would get too hot. Because normal analog microphones, or at least electret condenser microphones, which was what are standard for used to be standard for things like laptops and cell phones, were they have an electrical charge built into the membrane to create that voltage that I was talking about. And if you put them through a very hot process, then that electrical charge dissipates and they're no good anymore. So with the MEMS microphones, you can actually put them through the same process that you put the rest of the boards through, and you save a lot of steps, and they can then withstand heat changes just from day-to-day stuff, and they're a lot smaller. And then what we did is we put the digital circuitry onto the chip itself, so that then the output is digital rather than analog, which is going to mean you're going to have a lot less interference and distortion. So unless you like pops and clicks in your microphone
You know
output.
I do. Got me.
Yeah. So yeah, that's certainly gonna also colors my opinion about these other things as well, right? Dealing with all these
Wow.
issues where
Wow.
have people complaining because there's interference and stuff like that.
Yeah, you're sort of on this quest for purity somehow, like electrical purity, sonic purity.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair.
Is it? I mean, it's almost like pseudo-religious.
I don't know if I call it religious. I mean, I'd say it's more pursuit of perfection.
But isn't that a kind of a religious idea?
I would say, I don't know. I don't know that much about religion, but at least the way I think about it, that any perfection there relates more to moral compasses and stuff like that, as opposed to, you call yourself pure. What is that? That's more from like a personal perspective rather than a electrical perspective.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Or it could
there's a
go.
corollary, though. I mean, I see what you're saying.
It
For
could be
sure.
like the Japanese ideal of, building the perfect vase.
Yeah.
Clay, throwing clay until you've perfected your craft. Or,
Yeah.
um, laying stones in a garden at the exact perfect pace, so that when you walk through in a relaxed state of mind rather than in this hurried kind of when they're too far apart or too close together.
Yeah.
Um, so you left that company. They got bought by Bosch. Where did you end up to kind of
I mean,
complete the electrical engineering story?
yeah, I mean, I stayed there until we got shut down, actually. So I was there from pretty much the beginning till the end. And so Bosch bought us. They owned us for about 8 years. And they shut us down eventually, because we were only selling 30 million microphones a year.
That sounds like a lot of mics.
It does, but when you're making them via these processes, it's just all about scale. So we were losing money by selling them at competitive rates at 30 million a year. So we needed to sell like 100 million in order to be profitable.
Interesting. And they're going into laptops and cell phones.
Right.
And were there competitors? Was there another company that kind of got the scoop on the technology, and that was who was selling the rest?
Yeah, I mean, so Knowles, they were kind of one of the biggest players in that market. They were kind of always our big competitor, and they actually sued us at one point for patent infringement, and it was totally bullshit. And I mean, yeah, patent law is a whole other thing. But like, long story short, they sued us for some bullshit, and we ended up having to pay them like 1 or 2 cents per microphone that we sold. So anytime we sold a microphone, they were getting, even though we were selling at a loss, we were also paying them. Um,
It doesn't sound like a very good business model,
yeah,
Keeps.
yeah. I mean,
Um,
but the thing is, again, with these, like, it's this economy of scale. So
yeah.
in order to be profitable, it's like this race to either success or to being obsolete. Like, the more mics you sell, the more money you're going to lose until you make money, and then you make money.
Is
Um,
is that where you were getting all the acoustic paneling that you were like making art with?
yeah,
What
yeah,
was
yeah,
that
yeah. That was
story? That was really cool.
so those were so you know the microphones are made out of silicon, which is what you make computer chips out of, and those are made from wafers, where it'll be a circular disc that is you then use photolithography to make whatever. And so before those are diced up into the individual chips, they're this 6-inch wafer. You can do various sizes, but whenever those were shipped, they were produced usually in Asia. Or sometimes in Germany, depending on what we were doing. But whenever they were shipped from one side of the country or the world to the other, they would need to be shipped in a secure, approved process. And they would be shipped in this large, I'd say, 1.5 by 3 foot by 2 foot box. Um, and if you were sending one wafer, you would have to send it in the same approved box as if you were sending 300 wafers, just because that was the approved thing. So, yeah, I then acquired a large amount of this weird acoustic foam that has some neat acoustic properties as a result of that, because it was packed in this foam in order to prevent it from shipping issues. So I still have a garage full of it.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah,
I remember you all did a couple of those laser crunk parties with kind of like weird head things and
yeah,
like maybe some kind of like it looked like styrofoam at some point. I don't know.
yeah,
Like there were like these weird styrofoam helmets that I got photos of you DJing
yeah,
in like very early in my time at Pitt. And
yeah. It's actually it's actually polypropylene, not polystyrene. So that was one of the reasons I kept it, because it actually is a much higher quality foam than
it's
polystyrene.
denser.
Right. It
Yeah.
has more of a spongy texture
Mm-hmm.
than that sort of brittle texture. So it has like some give to it. That was why I ended up keeping it. It initially started as, oh, I should recycle this, and then I found out like you couldn't recycle it. But then I had some issues. So when I moved into my last place, there were two parallel walls that were just anytime you went in there and you started talking loudly, you'd get this slap echo that would, go back and forth, and sounded terrible. And so I had a bunch of foam, and I said, "Hey, why don't I put this on the walls?
Yeah.
Looks kind of cool." And so I did that, and actually eliminated it really well. And so I still have dreams of turning that into a business of selling them as acoustic wall treatment. I just kind of haven't fully got around to it.
That's so cool. That apartment, I guess, is no more. I've definitely been in there. That was like Lawrenceville.
South side.
Or okay,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Actually, I still have it, actually. If anybody was looking for a place to rent, hit me up.
nice. You selling your house, selling your car. What's going on, Keeps? What are you doing?
I'm not selling it. I'm just renting it.
Um, sweet. So, do you Airbnb at all or no?
I've been using this site called Furnished Finder. They do rentals for traveling nurses. Um,
Ooh,
yeah. So I just
nice.
started using it a couple months ago. Initially, it worked really well. I haven't got any hits after my first tenant yet, though. So
Mm,
I may need to move to some other things. But yeah, it's all furnished and stuff. So
cool. Yeah. So, all right. So that was the first job. Are you working for Zuckerberg now?
yeah, I'm working for Meta. Yeah,
Oh, how's that?
yeah, it's good. I survived the layoffs too, so that's always great.
The first round, the second round,
Yeah,
and the third round.
yeah.
Good.
There
That's good.
were really only
Okay,
two
two
so
rounds.
far, but yeah. But no, it's really cool. We're doing really really sweet stuff. And again, pushing boundaries of kind of what we can do. So I'm like in the research division, so we get to try out all sorts of new crazy stuff. If somebody has an idea, it's like go for it.
That's wild. So,
Yeah.
I mean, so you're engineer working on the VR in the VR space
Yeah,
mostly?
yeah. Yeah, so I mean, you can imagine with VR, you also need audio, right? So if you need to virtualize people's presence, then you also need to virtualize what they sound like. So that's kind of where I come in, building giant microphone arrays with tons of tiny microphones.
Interesting. Okay, so you're thinking about things like spatial audio and
Yep, exactly. It's like if you put a person in a room and then you need to make it sound like that person is across the room in a corner talking into the side of a couch, what's that going to sound like in relation to if they're whispering in your ear right next to you? You know, um,
fascinating. Did you see Oppenheimer
I
IMAX
have
yet?
not yet.
No.
I did see Barbie, but I didn't see
Really?
Oppenheimer yet.
Really? You
Yeah,
went Barb first.
yeah, I did. I did.
That's an interesting choice.
Yeah, it was good.
You
I enjoyed it.
you're happy with
I
the
would.
film?
I'd recommend it.
Recommending Barbie?
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to see Oppenheimer also, but just haven't got around to that yet.
There was someone at the Tiki Lounge last night who told me they wanted to pirate Oppenheimer to watch it on a bootleg version. And it was like the sound of nails going down a chalkboard when he said it. Made me so angry. Like I wanted to just throttle this person.
Because you didn't, because you wanted it to look like what it actually would look like and sound like in the theater. Is that why?
Wait.
So you
Are
did.
you
So you didn't want the quality degraded. Is that what you're saying?
okay. This is another joke about the vinyl. Good. That's good, Todd. Thank you. Yes. You're right. We want it to be as accurate as possible on the IMAX film, which is an analog technology on the actual disc, right? That's what the
I don't think
IMAX is.
Oh yeah, that's true.
is
IMAX is yeah.
an actual reel to
But I don't
reel
think.
kind of.
Well, I don't think
tech.
anymore. I think initially that was OmniMax. I don't know if IMAX. I think IMAX might be digital.
Okay, we have to look.
I'm
into
not
this.
sure though. I could be wrong. But either way, I mean I do fully agree with you. Going to the theater is
Especially for something
know,
like that.
yeah.
What are you doing?
right. There's certain things, yeah, sure you can watch at home. In general, I still wouldn't want to watch a ghetto bootleg copy, but yeah, I think the theaters is the way to go for a lot of stuff.
Big movies like that,
yeah,
like
big movies.
Dunkirk. You know, if
Right.
you want explosions, I mean, it's one thing if you have an amazing home theater and subs
Right.
and whatnot, but then you're waiting anyway. You know, you're gonna wait for a Blu-ray or wait for a good quality digital
Yeah.
Dolby kind of digital copy. So anyway, I was upset
Yeah.
about that. But the person there that was talking about your shirt was Ninja Papes. Ninja Papes played.
Oh yeah.
He told me about that he was associated with Bloomfield Bridge Tavern.
Oh yeah.
We were talking about the food.
Yeah, he was there. He came in a little closer toward the end, but he was sort of the relief that we needed, you know. It's like after doing we did the event weekly for 10 plus years or whatever.
Oof.
And he came in towards the end and really kind of provided a lot of the energy and enthusiasm we needed to. Always somebody would get a little tired and jaded, and right, and then somebody else would come in and take over. And
There were some good nights though. I mean, I definitely remember seeing you there a couple times. It was Tuesdays or what?
Wednesdays.
Okay. Wednesdays at the Bloomfield Bridge Tavern, R.I.P.
Yep.
And so there was some overlap. You were doing it kind of as soon as you got back. 2000. Were you still in Miami?
Yeah, I mainly became involved when I got back from college. I still was a little bit involved before, but I mean I wasn't in town, so it helped do whatever during summers.
Was it you and Jeff, or who was involved with the Fuzz drum and bass night?
There was a lot of people. I mean, it was a whole crew of I don't know how many over the years, probably 15 or more. But in those days, MPS, MVP, Alaska, Nick Bulletproof, Jeff Cut Ups. So
How did you guys meet? How did you meet Cut Ups?
I mean, he went to Shenley also. He graduated ahead of me, but we had some mutual friends through, I guess, probably, I think my sister knew him. She was 2 years ahead of me. And again, he was involved with the PBS crew, which was a bunch of people, but some of the people that I actively went to school with. So yeah, that's how I first knew him, through that crew, and then we were in touch all through the whole time, and also through the Pittsburgh Cleveland rave mailing list. Like I said, that was going on for a long time. So I knew of him for a while before that, and then you know,
So, was it your party or it was you and a bunch of other people's party?
yeah,
Or
me and a bunch of other people. Yeah.
and so how does that work? Were there meetings to decide who the guests would be? Did you text message each other, email, or what? You
Yeah,
got together and
it was a bit of a shit show in general. I mean, it's I will say I learned a lot about, I'd say, group dynamics through it. Um, at the beginning, everything was very easy. Everyone wanted to help. Everybody was dying to help, and that's straightforward. Things get a little more difficult with a group when there's no leader, and it's that some of the energy falls off, and who's going to do this, who's going to make a decision. It's kind of too many cooks in the kitchen kind of thing sometimes, or a lot of cooks in the kitchen but nobody doing anything, or nobody wanting to make a decision. So yeah, I mean, we did, I think email was our default communication protocol. We'd have meetings as well, which usually were more just like getting together to drink and barbecue and bullshit for 3/4 of the time, talk about stuff for 1/4 of the time, get maybe one or two things actually established. Um, but yeah, just kind of worked.
and at some point you wanted really your own thing. And that's why, I mean,
Um,
you'd say it was much easier now that, I mean, Laser Crunk is just the two of you, right?
yeah, but I mean, I wouldn't say it was because we wanted our own thing per se. It was more because we we wanted something different. I mean, I'd been DJing at the time that Laser Crunk started for, I guess, 10-ish years, a little over 10 years, and I'd only spun drum and bass. And then that was when I was saying before that I started using digital, and I was able to play a lot of different stuff, and it was when a lot of this remix and other things started to come around and exist and was exciting. And so it was more that what we wanted to do didn't fit in with fuzz.
Cool.
And so in order to do that, it just made sense to do something else.
Did
Um,
you get lasers from the very beginning? Were there always lasers?
um, Pretty close to it, at least. I mean, I'm not gonna say that the lasers at the beginning were any good. They were. I'm not also gonna say that they were legal. They were definitely from China, and they were definitely not. They definitely did not follow
You tried to burn the Brillo box
real
down?
standards. Yeah.
Nice.
But I will say that I've always been cognizant of not shining them in people's eyes, which is
Cool.
a big
They
thing.
look great now.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
Yeah. Mad Beats. 15th year anniversary,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Well, that was the one.
That was a good one. Yeah. Um,
What were some of the most memorable ones for you? Some of the guests that you were like most excited to bring out, or when something crazy happened, or just memorable
um,
episodes.
I'd say plastician. When we had plastician,
Oof.
that was a really big one. Yeah, that was really cool. And we had EPROM. That was really sweet. And we've had a lot of guests who have gone on to do big things now as well. We had Swindle play. And he's pretty big now. K Tronada. We had
Wow.
yeah, there's definitely. Oh, and, St. John Hawk, who's also gone on to do a lot of cool stuff. Yeah, we've had a lot of people over the years that have done good things, but it's honestly usually more about just like the feeling of the night, that has different energies and stuff that really add to it the most. I mean, the DJ always helps with that, but it's yeah, it's usually more about just the vibe of the night, I would say.
Yeah. Well, Brillo's I will set the scene for people who haven't been there. I mean, it's a pretty small venue,
Yeah.
and that's been the venue the whole time, right? 15 years.
Yeah, yeah. I
And
mean,
the upstairs, I mean, it can't hold 100 people, can it?
yeah, yeah. It's I think
150 at the most.
I think the legal capacity is, I think, 110 or something
Yeah.
like that. But over the course of the night, you can cycle more people through. But yeah,
Sure.
if you get 70 people in at a time at one time, it
Feels.
feels pretty great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I mean that's been a big factor, and that's why kind of why we haven't changed is that we like more that like cultivating a unique experience than just being a large venue. And we've done stuff at bigger venues as well, like done stuff at Spirit, done stuff at Belvedere's, and those are cool. But our home base, always feels like it should be Brillo Box.
Can you operate at not necessarily a profit, but can you break even and continue to bring in this kind of talent from the UK and from Chicago and from LA and do it in that venue
Yeah,
forever?
yeah, I think so. I mean, we are realistic with what we want to pay for stuff, and we explain to the agents. Um, and I would say at the heart of it, uh, the people we want are always going to be underground to some extent. They may not be, they may be a little more popular or whatever, but they're still underground at the heart of it. And if they understand what we're doing and what we're trying to achieve, then they're usually pretty cool with playing for us at a discounted rate if necessary. And I mean, we've never taken money out of Laser Crunk, in terms of we have a like a fund that we just put everything into. So if we make money one month, the next month we may not make money, and we'll just take it out of that to pay for that.
Nice. You mentioned that the original inspiration was this kind of mashup culture, which existed in a big way at
Yeah.
the time when it started, which was, I guess, 2007 or something like
Yeah,
that. Right?
2008.
Yeah. So, which was really right when I was kind of getting started. Girl Talk, Greg Gillis
Yep.
from Pittsburgh. Did you ever think about doing a boiler room type of setup where people can get up on stage and be behind the DJ? You could get another 10, 15 people in.
Yeah, I mean, it's happened certainly at times. Whenever he played, I feel like it may have happened that night. I don't remember, but it there was a time when it used to happen more, and especially when Jeff used to spin using vinyl, and then that people would start jumping, and that becomes a no. So ultimately, especially now with lasers, like we can't really have people up there jumping around and potentially doing, screwing the lasers up, messing with people. So, yeah, I mean, I think that venue is a little too small to do a boiler room type set. Although, eh, who knows? I mean, if we elevated the lasers off the ground instead of having them on stands, had the turntables in front of the stage, let people go up on stage, it could probably be done. It's a good point. Be fun.
Could fit a couple more in there. But do you have any goals for the party?
Not really. I mean, we've gone from being monthly to being more quarterly-ish, which I've liked a lot. It used to be that we were Thursday nights for a while every month, and with work and not being 30 anymore, that's nice to not do that. And I think quarterly also, just over time, the specialness of it wears off in people's minds. So having it be every month makes that happen even faster. That wear off of the specialness. So having it be quarterly or just intermittent makes it so that people are a little more excited for it and anticipate it more. And it gives us more time to breathe in between, regroup, come up with who we really want to bring, as opposed to needing to fill a date, which, not that we've ever have throwaway guests, but when you can put more thought into it, it'll be a little bit more intentional. I think it turns out better in the end.
And it also, I mean, I think this is such a good point for people to hear if you're able to afford doing it. The reason I would say is if it's not weekly, it might as well be quarterly or yearly. It doesn't matter. So what I mean by that is the idea of first Thursdays, second Fridays, third Saturdays. Nobody remembers. Nobody will be able to remember. There's no benefit other than weekly. If you're somewhere every Friday night, they'll know. like you said, you can burn yourself out doing it monthly. So weekly is a big reach,
Yeah. No.
depending on who you are and depending on the venue, the city, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. No. That's a good point. I mean, I think there is some advantage to being, like you're saying, first Thursday or second Friday or whatever, but it's it's much less a than weekly, and I think the advantage you get of it is at least in most cases not as great. I mean, Titletown, for example, though, there are some of the people who they can do that. They can actually make that a thing. Um, I say that, meanwhile, in my head, I don't know.
You don't remember which
I
day
don't
it is? I was
remember
about
which
to ask
day
you
it
the
is.
first Friday.
Yeah. But I do know that there are some people who do know which it is because somebody said it to me recently. That's the main reason I know. But yes, so yes,
That's awesome.
I do I do agree. I've never thought of that before though. It's a good point. I think I think the advantages of it don't outweigh the negatives.
Yeah, the intermediary strategy is the one that Goldmark, that Nugget has undertaken at Goldmark, which is where you have the same kind of music every Wednesday, every Thursday. So you do Wednesdays are techno, electronic music, but it's
Right.
a different party every week of the month. So they know that they're the first Friday or first Wednesday or whatever, but people can just show up every Wednesday expecting electronic music. But
Yeah,
I
makes
don't know.
sense.
I don't know. So no big goals for the party. What about for your DJing career or like your music career? Anything that you want to achieve that you haven't?
Um, I mean, I always say I'd like to do more production, but I I never actually get around to it. I always say it. I mean, I do sometimes, but not as much as I would like to. Not to the point that I'd really have some. Not to the point that I have a lot to show for it. A little bit, but um,
Maybe
and
you're trying to get too perfect.
that's probably true. It's probably very true. um, uh, but yeah, I think I mean one thing now I like I said before I've been kind of starting to DJ on or on CDJs a little bit more, which I found to be nice, um, mainly because so what I use right now is my laptop and I have a few controllers that I've custom mapped for my purposes, including an iPad that I use as a controller and another thing for samples and a custom mapped APC40 MK2 that's usually used for Ableton. And I really like doing that, but it the doesn't have some of the engagement with the audience as much because as it is with a CDJs and a mixer where you can just show up, put your flash drive in and go. Um, and there's a little bit more physicality from a visual perspective. I wouldn't even say it's more physical from what I'm actually doing. I can do more with my own setup as far as jumping around to cue points, looping, things like that. But the technology for CDJs is catching up now. So they have a lot more of that you can do now. So I think if I invested more time into that, I could become probably not 100% of where I am with my current setup, but pretty close. Especially if I spent the $6,000 to get CDJ 3000s, which are the new ones, which is ridiculous in my opinion, but is what gear costs these days. So yeah, but being able to show up, and the other thing that is afforded with that is the ability to tag with other people more. And so me and Jeff at Lasercronk for pretty much the entirety, we've always traded off half hour, 45-minute, hour sets because he uses Serato, I use Tractor, we use very different controller setups. But we just played a party recently where there were going to be CDJs there. The promoter wanted us to tag team, and I said, "Hey, let's just do it. Let's put our stuff into the correct format and figure it out." And we did. Ended up working out really great. It was a lot of fun.
Was this the Highline?
Yeah, the Highline event. Yeah.
Nice.
So yeah, it ended up being a lot of fun. And
You played it on
was cool.
CDJs?
Yeah, yeah.
Nice. So you like it?
Yeah, well, yeah.
I mean, the alternative would be something like putting a GoPro over the top so that people can see what you're up to a little bit better.
Yeah.
Or angling it, right? So
Yeah.
sometimes like people like Jeremy,
That's true.
what's his last name? The MPC
I know what you're
guy.
talking about, yeah.
He's amazing, from Detroit also. But you can angle the MPC a little bit so the crowd can see it. So you
Yeah.
can put it on the stand like that.
And that is a better, that's actually better from an ergonomic standpoint as well, because if you keep your wrists
Ah.
straight like that,
Oh. Ellis, Jeremy Ellis.
Yes, yeah.
Unbelievable, insane. If you guys haven't seen it, go on YouTube. Wow.
Yeah.
So,
But there's also, it's funny though, because there's a level though where that performity, I don't know what the right word is, but where that, I would say, detracts from it for certain types of music. So it's great, but I don't know how many turntablist sets I've seen where people just stand around and watch the turntablist, because what they're doing is incredible and extremely impressive, but it does, I'd say, sometimes detract from the club feeling. So there's sort of that middle ground that you want of some entertainment value, visual entertainment value for the crowd, but not too much that they get distracted by it.
get it out of the way early in the set. This makes me think about the last time I saw Kanye was Life of Pablo tour, when he was on the floating platform,
Uh-huh.
and the way he. So one of the biggest problems with live performance in music now is related to the fact that everyone has their iPhones up for the entire time, and it just detracts from the entire experience. It makes it miserable, at least for me.
Yeah.
Even as a very tall person. But what he did was he just brought the platform over to every section, angled it like this, got within 20 or 30 feet of each section one at a time, so everybody could get their photos within the first 15 minutes of the show, and then he just turned it into a fucking rager. It was one of the smartest things I ever saw anybody do.
Yeah.
Everybody had their perfect photos. Everybody put their phones in their pocket and got loose and started just losing their minds.
Yeah, that's cool.
So maybe some CDJs, maybe some production. What's the production take in the form of? Is it Ableton, or what have you been dabbling with?
I use Ableton as well as Machine.
Cool. That's the APC MPK 25 or whatever that you have.
No, Machine is like Native Instruments. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean it's similar to an MPC style format with a 4x4 grid, but it also has screens at the top that you can see your plugins in and whatnot.
It's not just a hardware; it's a digital audio workstation as well.
Right.
That's right.
The unfortunate thing with that is Native Instruments isn't really thriving these days, so their development has certainly taken a hit. So I don't know how much longer that's going to be around, but I think it's a great system in terms of having a physical interface as well as the computer power. We'll just see where it goes.
Yeah. What kind of stuff are you making?
I mean, I like. It kind of depends what I've been recently feeling. I think the kind of electro breakish sound right now is one of the most exciting to me. So that kind of stuff is pretty cool. That's probably where I would lend most. I mean, I really like the piano stuff that's happening as well.
Totally. Burna Boy concert on iTunes right now. Incredible.
Oh,
Apple,
nice.
what is it? Apple TV or whatever?
Apple Music.
Amazing.
Okay.
Apple TV.
Okay.
So cool.
Nice.
Wow. Although he jacked his outfit from Koof Knots. Shout out to Koof. Very excited for him to come on the podcast. The one door opens, one door closes, another door opens thing. So I had like a couple different guests kind of cancel over the last couple weeks while I was on vacation. I didn't have anybody, whatever. But just in the last 24 hours, I've had two of the people that I'm most excited to interview on here call me and let me know that, or message me on Instagram, let me know that they want to come on when they're in town.
Nice.
I think that's really where it takes the next step. I'm not interested in anything remote. I don't want to do anything over Zoom ever. I want people up here sweating in my attic, taking air conditioning breaks and seeing, what my life's like, whatever, meeting my family. But the ability to get beyond Pittsburgh is to convince people when they're in town to come and come up here. So we'll see. I'd love to have a place that's closer to the center of the city. So who knows? It'd be cool to, you know what I'm saying? Like if you had something in the East End, or if you had something closer to a central location,
like a studio setup,
it'd be a lot easier for people to get to from their gigs, like at late night after their gigs, before they have to fly out in the morning or something like that. They're not going to drive to Dormont.
Yeah. Well, with Uber nowadays, I mean,
They'd have to really
They're
want it.
they're not gonna be driving anyways. They're getting in an Uber. They don't even need, don't tell them
Don't
what
tell
it
them.
is.
Yeah,
Just
1653.
I'll put you in
Nope.
an Uber.
Outed myself. I didn't say the street name.
SWAT.
So okay, so making some breaks. Have you released anything? Is there anything on SoundCloud or?
I released stuff a while ago. I mean, we did have some ambitions of having a Laser Crunk label for a while.
Whoa.
And we did release one track by Lamoti, and then me and Beatty. I don't know if you're the local MC.
Yeah.
We
I
did
like
we,
BD.
we did a remix of that track, and I'm really proud of it. I mean, it sounds really great. And it was cool to collaborate with him on it. So yeah, that's on Bandcamp.
Oh.
Laser Crunk Audio. But
What's the name of the record?
Never Again.
I've got to get him on. That would be really, really cool. I need more rappers. I don't think I've had a single rapper on here. So
yeah.
I've got Kid A coming, which will be
Oh,
exciting.
nice, cool.
But Beatty would be great. And Koof is a rapper. He'll be here. So some production. Laser Crunk.
Yeah.
The label, maybe. And but you have so many other interests that we have to get into. So you did this so one thing is the photography and drones, which we should go down that road. Another is this monster truck tour thing. Where did that come from?
That just came from me and some friends, wanting to go to the Monster Jam. Wanted to go see some monster trucks, and about, I think the first one was maybe 10 of us or so, and we just bought some tickets and we went, and then next year it was 20, next year was 30, next year was 40, whatever, and it's just gone up and up and up until the 200 that we've had this last year. And it's just a good goofy time. Everybody having fun, and it's cool because people can bring their kids now. People that have kids can bring kids. It's a nice family-centered event where you can get crazy if you want to. You can be that somewhat down to earth if you want to. And I just
It's so loud.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can hang. I don't know if I could do it again. But my kid definitely couldn't handle it. He was just like, yeah, this is not for me. I mean, he didn't say it that way, but it was clear that this was not his event. For me, it's just like, I really like the visual spectacle, but I guess I just don't have strong enough earplugs or something.
What kind of earplugs did you have?
I have the in-ear called ear bowls, which are molded, but not like perfectly. I think I'm probably due for.
Oh, those the ones where you send away for them?
I made them myself.
Okay, yeah.
I molded them into my own ears with like hot wax or whatever.
Yeah.
But then I also put over ears over the top, electronic over ears.
Electronic over ears?
Yeah.
What are those?
Like the kinds you would take to a shooting range.
Oh, electronic ones. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. But still, not enough.
Yeah. I wonder what those are. Be interested to hear more about those. But, I mean...
Yeah. I have a pair. I'll show you later.
Yeah. I mean, normal foam earplugs work pretty well. I mean, for me, the amount of time that they're making noise is not significant to be super worried about it. I mean, it certainly is good to wear hearing protection there, especially for kids too. But I usually just wear my musician's plugs, and I'm okay with that.
There's a lot of in between stuff, right? They're only really revving the motors for their little stunts,
right?
But it is. I mean, it's a marvelous spectacle.
Yeah.
Seeing what I saw. What else? So now you have a drone or more than one drone, and what's the story with that? Have you been using it much? I saw you were kind of getting into you had gotten pretty like impressive with flying it at some point.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty great. I've always wanted to get a drone, and but the kind of hurdle was that I didn't think using it on a phone seemed like that much fun. And there's FPV drones, which are people do tricks and racing with and do all sorts of crazy stuff. But
That's first person view where you're
yeah,
wearing the actual goggles and you're able to drive it as if you are the drone.
right. And that's sort of what always appealed to me the most, the experience of doing that. But uh, the batteries don't last very long on them usually, and the video quality that you actually see isn't that great. But then DJI finally came out with their version of an FPV drone, which was somewhat reasonably priced. And I mean, somewhat quote unquote, it's still expensive, but and you could it really high quality visuals. Battery lasts a decent amount of time. And by that, I mean like 11, 12 minutes, which still isn't much compared to
Wow.
other drones, but compared to normal FPV drones that are more like 3 or 4 minutes, it's a while.
Wow.
And the video quality is super good. Recording quality is good. And there's a nice cage around it. It's they call a Cinewhoop style, where there's propeller guards, so that if you hit something, you're not going to destroy your drone.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
yeah, so
Huh.
so that was kind of
It's
what.
like a circle around the propeller.
Yep, exactly.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
Huh.
and so you can't.
Cinewhoop.
Yeah, Cinewhoop, and you kind of can't. Those propeller guards, I think, limit the crazy stuff you can do with it, but I'm not really that concerned with doing a bunch of flips and whatnot.
Right.
I like the experience of doing it, and then having something that looks cool afterwards, and that isn't going to cause somebody to feel like they're going to throw up afterwards, which I feel like some of it does. I mean, I don't get me wrong, I totally respect FPV pilots. I mean, they do crazy stuff, and it's extremely difficult. But I'm a little bit more into it for the kind of artistic, not artistic, but yeah, cinematic style, where you're going to have something that's dynamic with the drone moving through the air and going close to things, but not necessarily doing flips and doing crazy stuff.
Do you?
Um,
We were talking about the battery life, and it makes me think about cobalt mining and all of this kind of, conflict minerals discussion, right? So, at what cost are we under? Are we developing all these new technologies and building all of these kind of devices that can uh, fly through the air and take our picture or take cool pictures of the point or whatever?
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I mean, I think battery technology is certainly the Achilles heel of a lot of stuff. And I mean, I think one of the things I have a hard time wrapping my head around is disposable things that have batteries in them. I mean,
mm.
the elf bars and all the vapes that you just hit and then you throw away, you know, um, those are yeah, there it is. I mean, to me those are the worst. Uh, oh, I thought I was gonna say Doc Elf bar. Um,
No, it's like sugar daddy bar or something. It's so embarrassing.
yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah, that's bad,
yeah.
isn't it?
It,
That's thing is it has a lithium ion battery, I guess.
yeah, it's a rechargeable battery too. So that's the thing with those. I mean, it's not even
Wow.
a normal battery; it's a rechargeable battery, which are even worse. And I mean, all of those things, literally everything that you get that has a battery like that says on it, this needs to be properly disposed of. Which
Mm.
means that you take it to a recycling place that removes the battery and does that. And like, how many people actually do that? It's a very, very small percentage. And B, how many recycling places actually responsibly do what they say they're going to do? I don't know the answer to that, but it's not 100% for sure. um, so it's a big question, and uh, I at least feel better if I'm going to use a battery for a while, and and if it's a bigger battery, if it's a battery that can be separated from the device that you're using it in, I think there's again, I don't know this, but I think there's probably a much higher likelihood that it's going to be recycled responsibly if you give it to an e-cycling place, as opposed to something like that where it has to be taken apart. And I mean, yeah, I got a electric toothbrush, and I just remember it was one of the first things that I saw that actually explained how you're supposed to take out the removable battery that's inside of it, or the rechargeable battery that's inside of it. And it literally said to take it and smash it with a hammer and then squeeze it hard enough that the bottom pops out, and then you can remove the battery like this way. And it's just like, nobody's gonna do that.
No.
Like I probably would do that because I'm just a nerd like that, but most people aren't. And if you don't make it easy for the general population, they're not gonna do it. And I don't blame people for it. It's just, whatever. So I don't know, that's my rant on batteries.
No, that was great. That helped me a lot. I can't believe I didn't even. I'm over here judging you for your drone, and I never even thought about the vape pens.
Yeah.
That is, I mean, if you needed one more reason not to, right? It's like,
Right.
number one, you don't want to be addicted to nicotine because that's terrible. And as soon as the battery dies, you're just going to be at the corner store buying a pack of
Right.
cigarettes, right? It's like, obviously. And then, wow. And then we don't know what that vape juice is. It's probably the same as what we were doing, like breathing in the fog machine
Yeah.
for
Right.
decades.
Yeah.
Like, well, you wouldn't do that, but you're over here just, yeah, not the best.
Yeah. But I mean, it's there's this cross section of, design versus functionality that those have struck, where people want to be able to just charge it up and not do it, and that makes it a lot smaller, etc. I mean, remember back when phones had removable batteries, and
Of course.
people would, whenever Apple was moving towards non-removable batteries, everybody was like, "This is ridiculous. Nobody's gonna buy one of these phones." I always want a removable battery, but then every company realized, actually, we can make it a lot smaller, a lot more reliable if we keep the battery encased in it. And I mean, I'll give it up for Apple too. Like, they are actually good about recycling. You can take things back to their store, and I'm pretty sure, do at least a decent job of recycling it. But not every company's like them and has that kind of overhead and can't do that. So, your average Joe Blow electronics company isn't going to do that, or even the bigger other companies that don't have a physical store presence aren't going to have that ability for somebody to go and take their device and give it to them.
Ninja used to do it down here. My buddy used to work for them.
Okay,
The
yeah.
dude was named Milton Barr. That was his boss at Ninja Electronics. And they actually have a storefront right here in Dormont, but I haven't been inside yet.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
I doubt he is still involved with the business. I'm sure they sold it many years ago. The interesting part that you just mentioned about having the integrated battery with the cell phone is that now there's no way to completely disengage the device. Even when it's off, there are still some elements, like, for example, when your iPhone's off, you can still identify where it is. So, like, how is that possible?
Well, you can identify the last known location of it.
Okay.
Yeah, you can't still track it once it's off.
But there's still some issues when it's completely off. Like, if you have the right type of software presence, it's not fully. I'm telling you, unless you take that battery out, they can listen. Some way they can get you, and you need a Faraday cage. It's the only option. And this brings me to my party. I'm gonna continue with this rant. You got to get the Faraday cage. It's very important. This is my tinfoil hat piece. It actually is tinfoil.
Literally a tinfoil
Literally,
hat,
you
yes.
need tinfoil.
Well, you know what?
Inside.
The thing that we got sued over was a Faraday cage.
Really?
That was the patent. The other company patented putting a Faraday cage around a microphone to prevent electronic interference from affecting the microphone. And meanwhile, that's just a Faraday cage has been around forever, and somehow they patented it, which is why it was a bullshit patent.
They connected it with this second technology, or created like a use case for it. Interesting.
It ended up getting struck down, by the way, but after we went out of business.
After you gave them all those pennies,
right,
all those
exactly.
millions of pennies.
Exactly.
So 30 million, 2 cents a year. That's it's not a small sum. So the idea is to have what's called Stone Age brunch, probably Sky Bar or Sky Blue or Blue Sky or whatever in East Liberty.
Sky Bar versus Blue Sky. You could do it at both of them. Sky Bar and Southside.
Definitely not Sky Bar.
Where the infamous water bottle
We're
incident
not doing
occurred.
that. Yeah, we're not doing that. But Blue Sky would be great because they have great food, and it would be a brunch where there's no technology. So everybody has I buy a bunch of Faraday cages. I'm already looking into it, whether I have to make them or buy them or whatever it is. But little bags that I can have people put their iPhones in, close them up, put the iPhone back in the purse, put it back in your pocket or whatever, but you're not tempted to use it.
Mhm.
It won't ring, whatever. If there's an emergency, you can pull it out, no problem.
Well, I mean, you wouldn't know if there's an emergency because nobody would be able to contact you with it.
You would know because the fireballs would be raining down from heaven, Todd.
Okay, for emergency for you, but not for somebody else.
Right, you're actually supposed to be engaged with the music, with the scene, with what's going on. So all 45s probably, like it would be all vinyl at least, but probably a 45 night or 45 day party, and no computers, just Polaroid cameras on the tables or something like that. Yeah, Stone Age brunch.
Yeah, that's a cool idea.
Yeah.
Wonder how far you could take it. I don't know if Blue Sky would like it because their POS system wouldn't work. And you have to do it all cash. It would have to be all cash.
That's aggressive.
No,
we could
come
do.
on.
No,
You
I
could
was
do all
thinking
cash.
NFT, but one that you've purchased beforehand, and you would actually have like a QR code or something, or you'd have some physical proof that you had ownership of the NFT. I don't know. That might be like a little counter to the point of the thing. Maybe you just give me $10.
Sure.
That's pretty analog.
Yeah. Yeah.
Handing me $10
cash.
is
Cash.
very analog.
Yeah.
And then the
Or how about this? Coins.
cold hard cash. Do you ever hear the term cold hard cash?
Bring your coins. Everybody could bring their coin jars, and that's how you would pay for everything. That would be kind of great, to be honest.
DJ Coinstar.
Use up your coins. Like monthly, or you could even do like a yearly thing. Just like save up your coins because in 1 year we're gonna have a coin party.
I'm gonna close this down, man. Anything else you want to talk about?
DJ Coinstar. You heard it here first.
Love you, bro. Thanks for doing it.
Thanks.
Cheers.